Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you all. Hi, Amy. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Lynn. Hi, Dan. Hi, Nicole. Hi, everyone. We are about to start in a few minutes, just to give a little bit of time to see if we will have more people joining us. How's everybody doing? Good. Okay, Jada. Hello, Jada. Okay, so we're just gonna start because we have a lot of content to cover today. Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much, as always, for being here today. This is our session 13 of the Homeroom Community of Practice. And today's session, we will provide you an overview of the youth dedicated programming, understanding the Youth Homeless Demonstration Program, the Runaway and Homeless Youth, and the Ohio Department of Health Funds. So there's a lot of content to be covered. So let's go and get started. So before we get started, can you please sign in the chat your name, pronouns, district, role, and something you're looking forward to. So I can start. I'm Ami, as you all know. I use she, her pronouns, and I work for the Coalition of Homelessness and Housing in Columbus, Ohio. And what I'm looking forward to, I will say I'm just looking forward to the weekend. Oh, actually, I'm traveling this weekend. Yes, I'm looking forward to traveling. So please use the chat and share that with us. So next slide, please. A little bit of housekeeping. So please ensure that you are muted when you're not speaking. Question can be asked throughout the session in the chat box. You can, what's next? Today's material will be shared in the chat box, and also it will be available on our website at cohhio.org/homelesseducation. We will have a breakout room today at the end of the session. No polls or quizzes. And if you have any audio and video issues, please log out and log in back in. You know how technology works, as I call technology. So next slide, please. Today's agenda, as I mentioned earlier, today's session is about youth dedicated programming funds, and we will hear from Home for Families and Sojourners Care Network, who will provide an overview of their programs, like when they're located, strategies, and collaborations. And then we will end up with some Q&A and close with some reminders. As always, this is our wonderful team at COHHIO. We've provided a lot of introduction in the past. You know, Amanda is our director. I'm Ami, and my wonderful colleague also is here, Evelyn. And as always, we are joined by the DEW, Department of Education and Workforce, who are always here to support you. With that, we are thrilled to welcome Melissa Humbert Washington from Home for Families and Kendall Linkford from Sojourner Care Network. But before we go to our guest speakers, Amanda is going to give you an overview of those programs, and then we will pass it on to Melissa. Thank you. Amanda.
Hi. Hello. Thanks for everyone's patience. I've got a snoring pit bull in my office, and I am fine, but I was in a car accident this morning, so it's been a little bit of a hectic day. But so I don't have slides for this content, but you can always follow up with me. I'm happy to provide any additional information. But I invited Melissa and Kendall here today because both of them work for agencies that have a long-standing history in their communities of doing, or well-established, in their communities doing youth work with youth experiencing homelessness. And both of their agencies, you know, one is pretty urban and one is much more rural, but they have both worked very hard at their agencies to diversify funding and have a variety of funding sources coming in to support those services. So and so I know that not every community has this youth dedicated programming, but we still wanted you all to know what's out there, especially because as we hope that these programs will expand and be in more communities, we want you to know the kinds of things that we, you know, us at, you know, COHHIO and in the advocacy world will be working to try to get into your community. So there's three main like state and federally funded youth dedicated programming types that there's other types of things, but three in particular that we want to focus on. One is through HUD. It's through the Continuum of Care program. It's called the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program. But it's kind of a misnomer because it's in its like 7th year. So I think they've done a lot of demonstrating, but that's still how it's organized and funded. And I know that we have some new and existing YHDP communities represented on the call. And then we have Health and Human Services, Runaway and Homeless Youth funding. So YHDP does like, and again, you don't have to memorize this. I can always follow up, but YHDP can do 14 to 24. They do a lot of like 18 to 24 usually. Runaway and Homeless Youth is 14 to 21, depending on the program type. I'm looking at my speakers in case I speak out of turn. And those programs are very limited in the state. And then we also, Ohio Department of Health has a homeless youth program. Those funds are budgeted through the state budget and they are really flexible. So I'll let our speakers talk about that in the context of what they do, but those funds are very exciting because they can help support some of those gaps. I'm sure many of you on the call are always trying, you know, you're all trying to work your magic for the students that you work with and trying to find a funding source that can pay for something that isn't housing specific, but helps support housing stability can be a real challenge. So of course we're committed to housing first and making sure that folks have housing, but we all know there's other needs that students and families have to help them stay stable in their housing. So figuring out how to use those different funding sources and maximize that work and to get the best services we can for folks. And then also thinking a little bit about like how we do the work. So, you know, paths cross between housing and education, but when you're doing the full wraparound housing piece, when you're focused on the school piece, everybody in the room has different expertise. So just creating some space for our speakers, happy to take any questions. And I think with that, if that works, Melissa, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I made some slides, but then I'm also realizing that I think I need to give a little bit of context about my organization first. So I'm going to start with that. So Home for Families is located in Columbus, Ohio. We serve pretty much the entire county, Franklin County area. We can house people in all corners of the county. They just need to be located in the county or be willing to locate into the county. Our organization started in the mid-'80s with just a group of volunteers and the basic concept that kids shouldn't be homeless. So we started with just a few apartments that we had that we moved families into. It was when transitional housing was a big concept. We did that for several years. Then we started an after-school program that those kids who were living in those apartments went to that after-school program after school. And we did that for a really long time until the late 90s when transitional housing was no longer funded. And so then we moved to a rapid rehousing model where we were taking families out of shelter and putting them into homes of their own, and still had our after school program. And we did just those things for a really long time, until about 2016, 2017, when we decided, hey, we could probably do some other stuff. So we took on helping the Community Shelter Board, which is our lead housing entity in Franklin County, apply for the YHDP grant. It is a long, tedious process that involves anybody and everyone in the county that touches youth in any way. So you have justice system, you have schools, you have, housing, obviously, JFS, anyone and everyone comes to the table for many, many meetings where you come up with a proposal and you submit. And so in 2019, we were funded. And then very quickly in early 2020, we were funded for Ohio Department of Health's youth program as well. So we went from having really just the same couple of small programs for years and years and years to all of a sudden we blew up and started taking on more things. Perfect segue to that. So I wanted to start with just how these programs are similar, right? So if you looked at what a case manager in either of these programs does, it's the same. It's intensive, it's client-led, it's strength-based case management where we are spending lots of time with the youth that we serve. Weekly, at least, sometimes multiple times a week, we're providing transportation. We're teaching life skills. We are doing crisis intervention. We are doing all the things that a young person might need for their housing to be stabilized. And then we're also talking about any other goals that they have that are going to not just help them maintain housing, but, to help them move forward in their lives as well. Do you want to finish school? Do you want to become employed, or are you already working a job and you're not making enough money, so you want to go to some kind of training? Even all the way back to you have experienced so much trauma that you are not able to even go to school or thinking about working. So what kind of mental health services could we help you get so that you can start to heal and start to get to a point in which you can, learn to take care of yourself? We realize that if you are 18, 19, 20, 21, even 23, 24 and homeless, chances are you missed out on a lot of those skills that a lot of us during that age are building with our parents and other support systems. So our case managers are available to help with those things regardless of the type of funding. And then the goals, right? The ultimate goal is to help A, for these young adults to not be homeless at all, and then B, for them to stabilize their housing. So I thought it was important to say that regardless of where the money is coming from, the what we're doing and what the end goal is the same regardless. Next slide, please. So for us, I will share that our YHDP grant is about $2.6 million. And grant is about $225,000. So our goal, if we have youth that are at all eligible for YHDP, they're going into that program because it's where we have the most funding. It's where we have the most case management. So we take referrals directly from the family system. So if we have a young person with a child or children, we can get a referral and serve them that way. We have a single young adult that is in single shelter. We can serve them that way. We also have an outreach team in our system that Huckleberry House runs. It's called the CAR team. And so if there are young people living in their cars, or if they are staying at Star House, which is a drop-in center and not actually a shelter, or if they are squatting in a building, or they're staying in a tent, or kind of any of those situations that are considered, not meant for human habitation situations, the CAR team can do a referral and then send to us as well. But for YHDP, the parameters are pretty strict in terms of the individuals or families have to be literally homeless. So for ODH, that is not the same. You can be eminently at risk of homelessness and be served in that program. So these are your couch surfers. These are your people who do not have a stable place, but they don't quite meet definition of literal homelessness for YHDP. We've also been able to serve youth who are coming out of other programs. So in our system, there's a transitional living program that does not have any housing dollars attached. So youth can live in this program for 18 months, but then when they're exiting, there is no like first month's rent and deposit or any financial assistance for these youth to be housed. So we've partnered with that program and been able to get youth housed out of that program. We have youth who for YHDP have been housed, and all of a sudden they contact us and now they're going to be evicted. We can serve them. We know that if we don't, they're going right back into the shelter and they're going right back into the exact same situation that they were in before we stabilized them. So ODH gives us some flexibility to serve youth who are outside of those very traditional parameters of homelessness. And anybody who works with people in this age range knows that your housing situation may change from day to day. And you may have 7 different places that you've slept, and some of them may qualify you for the first funding source and some of them may not. So it's nice to be able to take referrals other ways. The other thing with ODH is that they don't dictate where we get our referrals from. So we can take referrals from providers. We can have youth call us directly. We have people who are in programs who are like, hey, my cousin needs help. My sister needs help. My friend needs help. And also internal referrals and transfers from other programs. So sometimes we might take a young person into a pregnancy program and we start working with them, and very quickly we realize like this should be a youth referral. Like, yes, they are pregnant, but they are probably going to need more time, and they need the youth specific services that we provide, so we can transfer them that way. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about, I've already mentioned some of our partners. For YHDP, I said the application itself involved, I don't even want to guess how many entities, 20, 30, 40, I don't know. But when it comes down to the work that we're doing and the funding that actually happens, Community Shelter Board is our continuum of care lead. I'm just going to briefly talk about that because I'm not sure if you guys all know how continuums of care work, and how money is split up county to county. So Franklin County is considered an entitlement county. So are all the other big counties in Ohio: Hamilton, Lucas, Cuyahoga, and several others. Every other county is grouped together with several other counties that make a small region. And so then they receive funding as a region rather than just as a county. And then COHHIO leads the continuum of care, which is all of those other counties that are not the entitlement counties. But there is housing money in every single county in the state. I know not everybody might know that. And you might say, no, there is not money in my county. There is. There is in every single county. Definitely some more than others. But they are all divided this way and they are all funded, definitely not equally, but this is how applications for these big grants work, as they go through your regions and your continuums of care. So CSB led the charge, and the application came from them because they are our unified funder in Franklin County. So then we are the subgrantee. So Home for Families has the award, and then we subgrant to Huckleberry House and YMCA to help us as well. So because we are a family provider, we felt more comfortable kind of utilizing partners who already serve single youth. So Huck House and YMCA serve any young men or young women in our YHDP programs who are not pregnant or parenting. Then we serve all the youth that are pregnant and parenting. So between the 4 of us, that's how the money lies, and that's where our services are provided. Next slide, please. So in terms of what we can do, I'm just talking a little bit about what we are currently doing with the funds in our county. So we do rapid rehousing. So similarly to what I was talking about that we already did with families, we take the youth families out of shelter. We get them in scattered site apartments, right? We work with landlords all over the county who said, yes, I'll work with this youth. The lease goes into the youth's name. We help with rental assistance. We definitely make referrals into, so sorry for the acronyms, I try to avoid doing this, but PSH is permanent supportive housing. So if you have a young person who has a disability, we try to get them into permanent supportive housing because that will provide a more permanent subsidy for them. The goal with most of our youth is definitely to get them working, get them to a place where they're going to be able to pay that rent after we step away. Definitely not always possible. EHV is emergency housing vouchers. So sometimes in our system, we get a heads up that we have some vouchers available to us. Any youth that we have that definitely have high needs, high barriers, we try to get them into those programs as well. And truthfully, most youth could probably use one of those 2 programs, right? You know, a 20-year-old that's parenting 2 children, that's experienced a lot of trauma. It's a situation where we're able to make referrals based on what we have. So if we have 10 vouchers available to us, we'll look in our entire portfolio of who we're serving and, try to select the people that have the highest needs. But we definitely know that there is more need than what we have the ability to fill, for sure. So yeah, basic model of rapid rehousing. We're helping you find an apartment, getting a landlord to sign a lease with you. We're paying rent for several months until you get to a place where you can pay it yourself. So we can do financial assistance for up to 2 years. We can continue case management after that up to 4 years. So we can potentially be with these young people, walking alongside them for up to 4 years. Now, most people do not take us up on case management after we can no longer pay rent. But that definitely is available for people who are interested. We also have transitional housing. So I mentioned before that in the 80s, we were doing transitional housing, and in the late 90s, that kind of stopped. Transitional housing is now kind of considered a good model for some specialized populations. Veterans is one of them. Youth is another one. Pregnant women sometimes too. So we do have some scattered site units, several buildings that we're master leasing, including a apartment complex called Kenmore Square that Huckleberry House is actually the owner. I mentioned that they were a partner of us too. So we are able to lease some of those units for youth. And then we also have a shared living house that the Y is using to put single young men in. So it's a shared living environment where it's a house with 5 bedrooms. Each one of the youth take a bedroom, and then they kind of share a kitchen and bathrooms and things like that. We master lease all of these units. So the lease goes in Home for Family's name. We pay the rent and utilities every month, and the youth live there. After they've been there for 12 months, they have to start paying a portion of their income. For the first 12 months, they pay nothing. Again, out of this transitional housing program, we make referrals to permanent supportive housing and emergency housing vouchers. And I also didn't mention any chance we have to get people on a waiting list for Section 8, we do. It's not always open, it's not always available, but when it's open, we would do that as well. For the people who are in transitional housing, after they transition out of that unit, they go into a place of their own, and then they go through the rapid rehousing program. So we have many years that we can serve those youth. If someone comes to us at 18 and we put them in a transitional housing unit, we can potentially serve them there until they're 20. We could put them in rapid rehousing and serve them there until they're 22. We couldn't pay any more after that, but we could do case management with them until they're 24. So we have the ability to serve them for a really long time. Our Ohio Department of Health program, because I mentioned it's less funding, we don't have as much money there. It's more shorter term housing stabilization and case management. So we're looking at around 6 months that we're serving youth there. And it's usually not full rent for that entire 6 months. It can be, but usually it's not. Very flexible financial assistance. We have paid for birth certificates. We have paid for furniture. We have paid for appliances. We have helped with transportation in terms of car repairs or bus passes, things like that. YHDP every year, I feel like, offers more and more flexibility. So they can pay for quite a few things now that we couldn't pay for in our first year. But ODH is always our catch for if it doesn't fit that list. If it's a non-qualified expense, then we can always use ODH funding. There are clients that we serve in both of these funding streams. So somebody could be open in YHDP, but they have a need that YHDP can't pay for. We would utilize ODH funding to pay for them. So they're essentially a member of both programs then. And we do that as often as we can to meet the needs of the youth, whatever their specific needs might be. Next slide, please. I just wanted to show you this. I don't know how helpful this is, but just to show you kind of what our staffing pattern is. We currently have 3 ODH case managers, and we have a whole boatload of YHDP case managers. We have a program director that supervises everybody, 2 managers. Our lead case manager does primarily things with our transitional housing units. She is responsible for flipping the units, working with our company to get repairs done, ordering furniture, helping with the move-ins. So that's kind of her role. And then the rest of the case managers are doing exactly that work that we talked about earlier, working with the youth, figuring out what their goal plan is, figuring out action steps, helping them meet the goals on their goal plan. Caseloads for us are 15 to 1, so 15 youth to 1 case manager. That can vary some if there's a huge need, but we don't go over that. We always stay at 15 or below. Slide, please. And that's all I have. I don't know. Do we want to wait for, do we want to do questions now, or do we want to do all the questions at the end?
It is totally up to you and to the audience. We can do some questions right now if they have any. If not, we can wait at the end.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. I know sometimes if you have something that you really want to ask, it's hard to wait.
Yeah.
But yeah, whatever people want to do.
So I guess we're gonna let Kendall go, and then if people have any questions, they still have time to ask at the end.
Sure, sounds great.
That was wonderful. Thank you for the amazing work that you are doing, honestly.
Thank you.
Kendall, the stage is all yours.
All right. Okay. So let me do share screening. Let's see. Okay. All right, everybody. Hi, I'm Kendall Langford, and I am the Associate Director at Sojourners Care Network. I threw this picture up here. This is what I was feeling when I was putting this presentation together, thinking about sharing with you all about our work and getting to know you all, our connections with schools, and anybody working with homeless youth, unsheltered homeless youth is really important to the work that we do in connecting with youth. So I'm the Associate Director at Sojourners. I've been there basically since the very beginning. We're about to celebrate our 25th anniversary. I'm really in grants management, proposal writing, and I supervise our outreach team, which we'll talk a little bit about in a minute. So I am going to start, so the goals for today that I had coming in was to let you all know about Sojourners in general. I know that from the chat, it looks like we have probably a lot of people that are in more urban areas and in more like central and northern Ohio. But I wanted just to make you all aware of what we're doing in general, because there are probably some things that would be beneficial to school-age youth, in addition to just what we're doing with homelessness. Then talk to you all about what we are doing in supporting youth experiencing homelessness and in our commitment to helping to end youth homelessness in Southeastern Ohio. I gathered some insights from our outreach team about working with unaccompanied homeless school-aged youth. And so I'd share some of that just real briefly, and then make connections so that we can work better together. So for anybody in the areas that we serve, hopefully we can partner and collaborate. So we serve 7 counties in Southeastern Ohio. We started in Benton County in MacArthur, which is like one of the most rural counties and largest county in the state and most rural. This is the house we bought that started Sojourners in 2000. And then next to it, it's really kind of an administrative office now, but it was a group home at one point. And on the side there is our transitional living program housing unit. So I always love this picture. So we serve Athens, Gallia, Hocking, Jackson, Meigs, Ross, and Benton counties. We have, well, I'll wait and say where we have YHDP and ODH and RIA grants in a second. Just to talk about our mission, Sojourners is a nonprofit. We always call ourselves a nonprofit youth development organization. We're rooted in Appalachian, Ohio, to empower young people to become healthy, responsible, productive citizens now in the future. So very asset-based, and we envision a day when no young person is considered at risk, deficient, or a problem to be solved, rather than we see them as partners in the development of themselves and their communities. Our guiding principles, we really believe in moral imagination. So really using our imagination to come up with creative solutions to affect social change, to be democratic and facilitative, from working with youth to within our staff, with partners and collaborators. We take an asset-based approach. We see ourselves as a social change organization. We have a long-term commitment to Appalachian, Ohio. We seek to serve before we seek to lead. So we are out there trying to get the work done before we say, hey, follow us. We have really value our partners and collaborators. We wouldn't be where we are today without those. We value respectful relationships, and we seek to earn public trust and be accountable. We serve foster. This is a general of who we serve. Foster care and foster youth who have aged out of foster care. We started in 1999 as a foster care agency, and very quickly decided that, hey, we wanted to look upstream and not only work with youth after they've had a crisis and are being taken from their families or in a challenging situation, but look for upstream and do some youth development activities. And really our homelessness and housing programs really kind of came out of some of that, looking at how do we best serve the young people in some of our youth development programs. We serve runaway and homeless youth, and we serve underemployed and disconnected youth. I'm not going to go over this, but I just want to talk about this general top heading here is how do we serve you? So safe shelter, we focus on mental health and physical well-being. We want to connect with youth with community resources. And also, I think an important part of this that doesn't show up on this is connection, permanent connections, so that they have a support system ongoing. A lot of times youth have disconnected from their families and sometimes friends and feel very alone, and so trying to develop those connections. Job training and readiness, education, and leadership development and community service. And so we're going to talk mainly about the housing programs, which we'll talk about starting on the next slide. But really, Sojourners has like 4 main units or prongs, and one is family support. One is outreach, which has a strong connection with our housing programs, and then job training and education. And so I wanted just to briefly talk about that. And our family support unit, we have a foster care network. We have about 15 to 20 foster care families. We serve somewhere from 25 to 30 youth in that foster care network every month. There's a much greater need, and the resource for recruitment coordinators are part of a grant to increase foster care families, because the more families we have, the more young people that we could serve in foster care. There is a great need there. Bridges, if you're not familiar, you may be familiar with this, because I think it would probably be something that a lot of young people, as they turn 18 and are graduating high school, would take advantage of, which is helping young people when they turn 18 and are leaving foster care to continue to receive case management, support, financial, and just all different types of support for up until they're age 21. We do supervised visitation programs in 6 counties. That's connected with foster care and with the county job and family service programs. We have a parenting program, and we're really trying to connect that parenting program with the parenting youth in our shelters, in our homeless shelters for youth. We have usually every month we have probably between 8 to 10 infants and toddlers that are staying in our shelters, and so we have young parenting families, so wanting to connect them with that. And then, as I mentioned, resource recruitment coordinators. It's a state program that we support by hiring basically people who are marketing the opportunity to become foster parents. So we're really excited to have that and support that in our region. And our outreach, so the outreach is funded through one of our YHDP programs right now, which we'll talk about. And so that we'll talk about that a little bit more, but we're really the front door. The outreach team is really the front door, the front porch for any homeless youth that are trying to get off the streets or get out of their dangerous situations. And then we also have the Athens Resiliency Center in Athens, right near the campus of Ohio University, which is a drop-in center, and also does resiliency programming for youth. And then we have job training and education right now, mainly with a youth build program in Ross County, where young people get work on their high school diploma or GED, get vocational training in nursing, child development, or construction, and then develop leadership and community service skills. So. And I will note, this picture is from one of our MLK Day events. One of our schools in Benton County used to go to school on MLK Day. And so we would go in and do programming in the schools around MLK Day focused type of programming. And this is one of the events that we had. So now I've got 3 pages to talk a little bit about our our homeless youth programs. So the first page, we're really going to talk about a lot of things that Melissa talked about. I think what Melissa's doing, I would say that our YHDP programs are really about kind of the intervention, the kind of crisis intervention. So we have a crisis response team. I'm just going to stop for a second. A lot of, it seemed to me, and I may be wrong, but I think that a lot of our programs that we do feed into the types of programs that Melissa is doing in Columbus. And one of our partners in the region is Integrated Services for Behavioral Health, and they do a lot of the programs similar to what Melissa was describing with the rapid rehousing and helping our young people get housing. So what we're doing, our emphasis is on finding young people, getting them out of their situations and kind of getting them into a crisis stabilization kind of way is way I would describe it. And then immediately Integrated Services begins working with them to help them find shelter, help them find permanent or ongoing shelter through the rapid rehousing program. So with our crisis response team, we do outreach and coordinated entry. We have a program director and 3 outreach coordinators. This includes the Athens Resiliency Center. At the Athens Resiliency Center, we have a laundry, a food bank, we have showers, a clothing bank, and internet access. And at that Resiliency Center, we also have 2 AmeriCorps ComCorps members who are helping to develop programming and outreach efforts for that drop-in center. So really the work that we're doing with our crisis response team is the work that they do is they could be answering calls, helping to divert young people, help them to figure out what are some other options in the community or with their family where they could stay or get out of an unstable living environment, or helping them come into our housing program that we have. So that's the crisis response team. And then we have the youth crisis transitional housing. And that is 4 transitional housing units, 1 in Athens, 1 in Gallia, Jackson, and Benton. This is a short-term stay. I mean, when we started, and I will say our timeline is very similar to Melissa's in terms of YHDP. We started in 2018. We had RIA programs we'll talk about in a second, probably since 2004, 2005, and then ODH the same as in 2020. So our crisis transitional housing units, we like to say kind of akin to a homeless shelter, but for youth. So it's a short-term stay on your way to something that's more individualized, more stable, longer term. It's 18 to 24-year-olds. We connect them with integrated services, and as I said, we stabilize and prepare them. What our staffing structure is that we have managers for each of our housing units, and then they have part-time shelter aides. And while a young person is at the crisis transitional housing unit, they're working to making sure they have their Social Security cards, their birth certificates, if they need driver's licenses, driver's education, that type of thing. We're working to do that so that they are prepared then to complete applications for housing and to be successful in doing that and in obtaining housing. They also do case management around, like we said, parenting, getting a job, figuring out what they want to do with education, all kind of on a more shorter term basis than ongoing. It's just probably 90 to 120 days might be the average. The problem that we have, and it probably is a problem a lot of people have, is that there's a dearth of low income housing and funding for that, and long waits, and so some young people may end up staying at our units a little longer than as they wait for the housing to become available. So we're always looking for trying to help. Okay, if there's not housing available through integrated or in the community, what are some other options to help them transition? Then our Runaway and Homeless Youth programs through the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Currently, we have a transitional living program, TLP, and a basic center program. TLP is basically 16 to 21, and basic center is under 18. With transitional living, what would make a difference for us in whether one, the age. So anybody under 18 is probably going to come to transitional living if it's deemed that most likely that they will not be able to be reunified with their family. The basic center is really a program that is, okay, a short-term issue in a family, but we think that we can have reunification and get the young person back in their house. If not, then they would go to transitional living, to our transitional living program. For the young people that are 18 to 21 who might also qualify for our YHDP program, the kind of selection or the kind of steering people to transitional living is if there's for some reason there's a need for extra kind of support, because the transitional living program, that unit is staffed much more heavily than 24/7 when we have young people under the age of 18, and it's a much more like family kind of unit, congregate housing kind of thing. But it is located in MacArthur, which is very kind of rural, and so it's not a great option for a lot of people that are out in some of the further areas like Athens and Gallia, kinds of things. But it is one of the options that we have. And then the basic center program, and the focus of the basic center program, one is for under 18, for unsheltered and unaccompanied youth under the age of 18. We usually work with young people between 14 to 17. It's usually who is, ends up taking advantage of basic center services. We do prevention activities, and then also emergency shelter at the same unit where our transitional living unit is. Reunification is our top priority there. It has 24/7 supervision and is located in MacArthur. And then I just wanted to mention, so actually our ODH program is the last one on the list, but I wanted to mention two other things that we have. We also have a permanent supportive housing program, and very similar to what Melissa mentioned, for youth with disabilities. They get longer term housing and more intensive case management support up to the age of 25. We also have what's very similar to crisis transitional housing units, but it's not within. We were funded for YHDP in Region 17 of our continuum of care, and Ross County is in Region 16, and so we have a similar unit in Ross County, but it's funded through a grant through the Ohio Office of Community Development. It was actually one of our first the permanent supportive housing and the supportive housing program were one of our first homeless programs that we had, housing programs. So very similar to that, but is in Ross County. And then our ODH program, I think both Amanda and Melissa have talked about how flexible the ODH program is, the funding. It really is, it's such a gift, I think, for for us to have that. I think for all of us, I think all of us that have ODH funding say that. For us, we use it to help increase the capacity of our crisis transitional housing and TLP units. It helps us provide additional staff. It helps to kind of fill as as costs increase. We wrote grants in 2018 to stay at that kind of same funding level, but then costs are increasing, so that helps. The ODH program helps with that, but it also does help that flexible area, those kind of those things that you can't get funded. And also for us, it's been really helpful there's just young people that it's just they have like a really unique situation that doesn't quite fit in either one of the other categories. And it's really, really helpful, or even at least temporarily, to help them fund them through ODH. And we do some homeless prevention types of things and diversion, including being able to do short-term hotel stays if needed, kind of thing. So, and let's see. Okay, so I got to take a quick drink of water here. So we talked to our outreach team, because thinking about talking to you all who are working in schools, working with unaccompanied school-aged youth, and talked about what were the challenges that when we do that we're seeing, and one of them is transportation. For us, as we talk about, we have these options for shelter. A lot of times they are filled, like maybe the one closest to a young person might be filled, so they might need to go to an adjacent county if they want to take advantage of shelter. And then we have the issue with transportation. So always trying to figure that out, and figure out what resources are available for that, or even just if they're within the county and they still need to get to the school. But and then we noticed that there's complex mental health needs, so really needing to have accessible mental health services. There's limited options for youth under 18, and so trying to be creative in figuring out what are the community resources that are within the county that might be able to support that. I know in Gallia County there's several other small nonprofit organizations who are trying to fill that gap, and so developing those relationships. And then the last thing I want to say is that we really want to be a resource of support to schools, and really want to collaborate, because we really feel like there's probably resources that we have that we could support some of your goals, as well as being able to work with school-based officials who are working with homeless youth, to understand and be able to educate and share resources. So, and these are just a few pictures from Sojourners. I wanted to end on one note, is that this is our staff on Valentine's Day a few years ago. And since we're so close to Valentine's Day, I thought that was an appropriate picture to use. And this is I like this quote because it kind of sums up kind of our philosophy, and saying, it's impossible, says pride, it's risky, said experience, it's pointless, said reason, and then give it a try, whispered the heart. And so that's kind of like we're down in southeastern Ohio trying to help young people have the most beneficial and productive lives and futures. So, and I just wanted to, in my presentation, we do have our contact information, who our staff people are in the region. And if you do go to our website, on our contact form, you can fill out the contact form, and it goes directly to our outreach team. So that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Kendall. That was amazing. You guys are doing such an amazing work, both you and Melissa. Thank you for all you do, honestly. We do have a question in the chat to Melissa and Kendall. Can you talk about how you have served on the 18 for overnight supports? And that's from Shana.
So we do not directly. Huckleberry House in our system is who has the RIA funded shelter, so they can take youth who are under 18. But yeah, we aren't able to with our funds. We are only able to help people who can be housed on their own, so they have to be 18 to be with us.
So with our basic center program, we're able to provide, I think, up to 14 days of shelter for under 18-year-olds. And that would be in our shelter at MacArthur. And then the transitional living program also, it's not overnight support, but it is, I mean, it could be overnight support, but I think that what Shanna might be saying is that kind of one-time overnight, like, call out the street. And one of the things I will mention too is that we are the safe place administrator for our region, and that plays a lot into the basic center too. And so if a young person goes to a safe place site in the region, then we have on-call and staff that go out and get them and bring them back to the basic center shelter for that emergency overnight stay.
Awesome.
Hope that answers.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yep, go ahead, Jada.
Hi, I'm the youth coordinator for the COC in Summit County. So, and I work with Shanna as well. So we're trying to figure that out because we're in the process of doing our CCP right now to, and we are doing a job run center. So you said 14 days. Are you putting them in a hotel because we've done that before, or how does that work for them? Are they staying there during the day, or is it overnight?
So with our basic center program, we have to have at least one dedicated bed for under 18-year-olds. And so that is within our transitional living unit. So if they come in, then they receive all the support services that we have within our RIA program. So, we have a case manager and those types of things. So yes, so they would be supported in that unit.
Okay, and since they're under 18, since they're minors, is there a lot? Do you have to get parental consent or guardian consent? Okay.
Yes, yeah, that is the case. Yes.
Okay, so what do you guys do when that child they've run away from the situation? Because I just want to see if there's anything that we haven't thought of in this situation for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is a challenge because the rule really is that you can't. I think that I think the rule may be that you can do it for 24 hours or less. But I will have to say, I have to qualify is that I do not do the direct service. And so the person that I can connect you with, I can put her contact number in the chat, is Kayla Dodrell. Or actually, I might give you Brandy Thacker with the outreach team's number. She was on that, but she would be able to describe to you what those parameters are that we have to deal with in that more directly. So would that help? Would that be helpful?
Yes, that would be great.
All right, I'll do that.
Awesome. Any other questions? So usually, we have breakout rooms, but today, since we're short on time and also the group is now large, we just have a few questions and anyone is welcome to respond to the question. So we just want to know what you've dedicated programming you have in your region and also how impactful those program has been for you, if you have any.
I think we can keep taking speaker questions too, if folks have speaker questions.
I I'm a little bit haunted by Jada's question. If I get it if that person has left school, but if there's an unaccompanied minor who's still in school, who has basically run away, is whatever, without a parent, that student is automatically McKinney-Vento eligible and therefore entitled to services, whatever they can be found, that would provide temporary housing. Am I wrong about that?
No,
So,
yeah.
so I guess I'm asking, wouldn't the school liaison have some information, if not responsibility, to help that student who?
So what I would say is yes. A lot of times young people come to us not through the schools, come through different avenues, and then sometimes also it may be that we're not able to get in contact with that representative, or I think we're always trying to make those contacts and that type of thing, but sometimes it's that it comes a different way, and then we try to make that contact after we get the young person and sheltered and stabilized.
So I'm the homeless liaison here in Akron, and Jana and I work in the same community. And McKinney-Vento programs do not provide housing, although we can qualify them as McKinney-Vento and unaccompanied youth. We would need a housing program locally to house the
Well,
students.
that I get. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what we experience here in Akron is a gap in that service. We have a program that is a runaway youth program, or it acts a little bit more as respite housing that require guardian signature. But we still have a handful of kids, maybe a dozen kids a year, who fall without services. So sometimes they've come from out of state. We've had kids who are traveling, maybe they met somebody online and they travel across state lines and they don't have a guardian in the States, and there's not a way to house that student without children's services involvement usually. And that's kind of the solution that Akron is looking for other communities that provide, one, because our children's services isn't always willing to get involved in under 18 students. So we're always looking for what other communities are doing to provide an overnight solution to an under 18 youth. And that,
Well, I honestly, I know it sounds bizarre, but my head went to, I would be tempted to try and get that kid to walk into the closest high school, register now. He doesn't need a custodian, a parent, an advocate. They have to register him, and clearly then he becomes McKinney-Vento eligible. However, if that's not going to get him services because the services aren't there, that doesn't do anything. And
yeah, so there's no barrier to school for that student. The enrollment to school is not the barrier. It's where to put that kiddo overnight.
And I'll just say that it's the law that is the barrier here, right? So there are states like Illinois has passed laws that minors can essentially, the process to be able to emancipate is much easier. You can have social service providers sign off that the child is unaccompanied. Ohio law doesn't allow it. So when somebody goes into a placement, like one of these respite youth shelters, after 24 hours, it's children's services that gets involved, right? If you can't get a parent or guardian or whoever to sign, they get involved with children's services. I mean, and kids will know this, so then they might run because they don't want to be involved with children's services. But I mean, again, it's the law that prevents us from being able to do anything here other than that.
So I just find, I guess part of me, because Akron just recently got a YHDP grant, and the services, yay, Jada and team, they wrote it, they nailed it, they got it, and they're working on planning services. part of me thinks, why are we saying that the YHDP grant serves? Why are we putting the unaccompanied youth age at under 18 when they don't qualify for all the services?
Yeah, and I think what Melissa pointed out was that, and Melissa, jump in if I'm wrong, but like, it's because it's a federal grant, it's like you can serve 14 to 24, but then like we're in Ohio and like because of our legal restrictions, it's much more difficult to serve. So it's they're eligible, but how can we actually serve them on the ground?
Yeah, and maybe that takes some advocacy, because I know that other states have said, under 18 students can be served in a shelter system. Maybe that's what it takes, but I also think federal law supersedes state law, and we're constantly in this circle with social service agencies and housing agencies that nobody wants to take on that risk or liability to serve a kid, and that's a point of frustration for me. Can you tell?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ohio is a big parents' rights state. I mean, that's what's holding all of this back, right? Is that the assumption that some parent is out there that just doesn't know where their kid is and that they have a right to know where their kid is. And we know that that's not the case. We have plenty of kids who are out there whose parents have zero interest in having anything to do with them. And if they do, it's not a positive thing that they're wanting from them. So yeah, but we absolutely could look to other states that have passed these kinds of laws. It's just that Ohio has been very unwilling to go that direction. So yeah, Amanda's right. It's a federal grant. So if you're in a state where they allow you to do these things, then you can. But here we're stuck with the confines of what we can legally do. Which and a lot of times it's kids skirt the system until they turn 18 and then they come to us, right?
Or they
You're
put themselves in
17 and a
pretty
half.
dangerous situations to get housing.
Yep, absolutely.
I really didn't think they'd touch it yet.
And Melissa, and I don't know if I heard incorrectly, you work with Star House in Columbus.
We do.
Okay, great, because I'll be down there next week with a bunch of my YAB kids, children's services. Shanna, are you coming with us as well? No.
I can't wait to hear what you learn.
I might record like a video just because when we were applying for YHDP and everything like that, we wanted to make sure we spoke to Shanna and her team to figure out how we can work with that youth unhoused population, because here in Akron, we have a drop-in center, but at 8 o'clock, then you have to figure out what to do with that child, which defeats the purpose of actually trying to be a drop-in center, in my opinion. If we can't help everybody, why are we doing this? So
well, and two things about Star House. So officially, no one's
Not a
allowed to
drop-in.
live there anywhere, right?
Exactly.
I mean, the drop-in center too. They are open round the clock now. So there are people that are staying there, but officially they are also not really allowed to house minors either. Like minors come there, they can do a lot of not asking questions for a short period of time, but ultimately, it's trying to get around the law that's in place and trying not to, to get in trouble or do things that aren't legal. But yeah, I mean, the service that they provide is huge here, because just having a place that people can stay, even though they aren't officially allowed to stay, they do. They have to leave every so many days, but they can come back at night. So
yeah, because that's what our YAB, that's what they modeled their CCP off of what they wanted to do. They said they wanted to drop in that's more centrally located, because it's not currently, but also, to have those different resources in there. Fortunately for us, we have a lot of partners in our community that we're connected with, different orgs and grassroots. So we have a lot of buy-in, but they definitely based what they wanted to do off of Star House. So just wanted to get some, ours is actually a youth advisory board. But yes, thank you.
yeah, and I will say our Star House doesn't get any funding from YHDP, so they're funded outside of the system.
Ooh. That is very.
Any other last questions or closing thoughts? All right, well, thank you to both of our guest speakers for today. Just a few reminders from the end of the session. Our next session will be in April and will be focused on the social determinants of health. Ami has also shared the feedback form from today's session in the chat. If you want a professional development certificate or attendance certificate, please fill that out and I will send you that. And yeah, am I missing anything, team? I think that's it.
That's it. This was wonderful. We went above time, so.
I thought we were scheduled to 2:15.
Oh,
So
well,
we had, so we had some time.
oh, okay.
But I appreciate our guest speakers so much. This was something that folks had asked for. And so I know it's hard when you don't have a particular service in your community, but I still think it's great. Like we talked about advocacy, hearing what's out there, hearing some of the challenges, you know, from the work I do around the state, you know, unaccompanied youth under 18 is a huge issue. Because of all the things we've been talking about, those under 18 dedicated programs are very limited. So there's you know, I've heard a lot of people talk about the need for respite beds, which is different than, you know, that's something different than somebody who is, you know, literally homeless, but you know, just a lot of things for us to think about as a group in the work that we're doing together to try to prevent and end youth homelessness. So reach out if you have questions, need follow-up, want to get connected. Again, a huge thank you to Kendall and Melissa, and let us know if you need anything, if you have any questions. I appreciate you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.